So I've been seeing a lot of rumors about the Sony a7V, a7V. I use the Sony a7 III and love it. Felt like we had to react to this video Jason Morris did talking about the a7 V, talking about some of the details, some of the rumors, and we'll watch it together and see what we think. And this should be pretty cool. So let's jump right in and get this going.
So it's about time we got to talk about the a7 V. Now that is the newest camera that will eventually come out in the Alpha 7 line. Now the a7 IV I'm filming on right now, I've batched that and I have pumped a whole bunch of videos when it comes to this camera because I really believe the image, the specs that you get in this is just the best value when it comes to the Sony cameras. And this is...
The thing about this line of Sony cameras, the a7 cameras, they shoot so beautifully. They have a fantastic log setting. They do really well in low light. Some of the best cameras in low light, I'd say, for this type of camera. The a7 III, the a7 IV, which came out just a couple of years ago now, really top tier in terms of what you're getting for a camera in specifications at the price you're going to get it at. So very excited about what potentially is coming with the a7 V. Let's keep going here.
Is now quite old. It's about 3 years old. It was announced in, I think it was October 2021. Most people got it in around sort of January 2022. I think I got mine in December 2022. And I've just absolutely loved this camera ever since. It's been my talking head camera ever since then. And it's, you know, come with me all around the world, all around Australia, a whole bunch of different places. It's just the camera to bring because of just the value and what you get out of this camera. But it's a new year, 2024/2025. There's a lot more specs that's happened since because cameras have evolved quite massively since then, especially when it comes to the competitors of the a7 IV. And I believe the a7 V should take a whole bunch of the new Sony stuff.
If you're looking for an expert freelancer, check out Fiverr. Connected with an expert freelancer on Fiverr. And he's been designing.
He makes a good point, though. There's such competition in the camera world between Canon, Nikon, even other brands than that. There's such competition now, and they're growing so quickly and so fast. The question is, where is Sony going to take this? Are we going to take some serious leaps and bounds forward, or is this just going to be slightly better than the a7 IV? I really hope they can make a big jump here, but time will tell. We'll see what he has to say more in this video.
It into the new a7 V, and the a7 line seems to be getting all the brand new features that the top end line has, that the bottom end line has, and just brings it into one. So the a7 IV has the 33 megapixel BSI CMOS sensor. Now it was a new sensor at the time, but it is a slightly slower readout sensor. So whether they're going to have the same sensor or at least the same megapixels, but just slightly faster readout, that would be absolutely phenomenal. Because
so what I'm hearing as of late is they're actually talking about a 36 megapixel sensor. So the hope is that we're actually going to be pushing this boundary. We're going to be better than the a7 IV. Again, time will tell. Let's see what else he has to say.
That was kind of like a drawback when it came to this sensor. It did actually have a slow readout because it's a 7K sensor that downsamples to 4K. Now, when you do crop it in at APS-C crop mode, I think it's like a 4.6K downsample to 4K.
You can see a little bit of banding.
It's really high resolution. It's a faster readout because it is cropping in on the sensor, but it's cropping in on the sensor, and not a lot of people like that. So we would hope to see full frame coverage, whether they pixel bend or line skip, whatever they do, just to try and give us the full frame sensor at 4K 60. That would be, you know, obviously great. And obviously a faster readout sensor would actually help with that. Whether
Full frame sensor at 4K 60 would be a really nice jump. You'd really love to see that in this camera. I'm also seeing there could be 6K 30 FPS in this camera too. So that would be a really nice jump just to get a little bit of extra quality. Again, we're using a larger sensor size and then cropping in to get down to 4K. So it'll be interesting to see how that 6K plays out. I cannot wait to see what that footage is going to look like.
Stacked sensor to get that faster readout. Not 100% sure because we did actually see a Sony sensor go in the Nikon Z6 Mark III. That's a partially stacked sensor. Now Sony haven't actually used that sensor, and maybe they just thought, oh, maybe it's an okay sensor, but it's not good enough to be in the a7 V, which, I mean, it's a good thing for us, whether they're working on a partially stacked sensor or even a fully stacked sensor at 33-ish sort of megapixels. That would be great, but we soon will see. Now, we did see about 5.5 stops of image stabilization in the a7 IV. And a7 V, you would imagine, just a little bit better, kind of like the a7R5. I think it's like 8 stops of image stabilization. Then you've got the ZV-E one with the dynamic active stability.
Sony's really doing a nice job with their IBIS. Their image stabilization is pretty good, actually, what you get with these cameras. In the a7 III, it's mediocre. They've got their steady shot, kind of a digital stabilization as well as some IBIS, and it's okay. It's not bad. It gets a lot better in the a7 IV. Obviously, the a7CR, really great. But I'm hoping they can step this up too, because that would be a nice touch just for a little bit of extra image stabilization in this camera.
They bring that, not 100% sure. They're kind of probably keeping that for, you know, the higher end cameras like the A9 III or the vlogging end cameras. So that would be nice, but you do get a 30% crop on that. So obviously that does crop in a little bit more, but it's crazy steady. But I wouldn't
say it's always critical to have the IBIS too. It's not something I'd rather them put their attention in other details as opposed to this. A lot of the times I'm actually turning this off because of those things like we're cropping in on our shot. Don't necessarily want to do that. Sometimes when I'm using a gimbal, the IBIS is throwing that off. So not something I need them to focus on for this camera. I'd rather them put their time and their money into other features. But if they have it, I'm not going to complain.
I'm personally pretty happy with the stability in most of these Sony cameras because I got the Sony FX6 that has 0 stabilization. Yep. So you really notice a difference there. Now, one drawback for a lot of people when it came to the a7 IV, for me, I didn't actually run into any issues ever since I've got the camera. Never overheated on me once, but there are so many people that I've heard that it overheated on them. Even apparently they went through the whole protocols of overheating temp to high, you know, flip out the screen, try and turn it off and on in between recording and all that sort of stuff. Apparently,
I've never had any serious issues with this either with overheating Sony cameras. I know some people have, but it hasn't been a problem for me.
Hopefully they'll try and mitigate that. Kind of like what they did with the a7R5. There isn't really any overheating issues, or put in active cooling, a little bit of a fan. Don't think they're going to do that, but you never know with the a7 V. But if they did actually fix that with the a7 V, wedding videographers would absolutely dig this camera. They would buy these cameras off the shelf like that because it is just the perfect hybrid camera for photo and video. And if there's 0 overheating issues...
Very true. Another ad.
They're just going to absolutely kill it because low light performance on this a7 IV is incredible. You've got 800 ISO and 3200 ISO as your two base ISOs, and it's super clean. Even if you do bump it up to 12,800, sometimes it actually looks better than the a7S III, even though it's not a low light sensitivity camera. That high resolution
these
kind
cameras,
of
they just
denses those pixels and makes the noise a little bit smaller. It's sometimes just a little bit better, especially through the mid-range of those ISO levels. I just love the image that actually comes out of the a7 IV. Now, one thing that I would love to see, and I'm not sure if Sony will do it, but like 6 or 7K recording. Now, there's a lot of camera manufacturers out there.
See, this I
think we're going to get. Kind of like the Lumix S5 Mark II X that I actually just did buy. It's got 6K open gate recording. Now, this is a 7K sensor. Whether they do like a 7K downsample to 6K and give you 6K recording, not sure. I would really love to see it though, rather than just, you know, you downsampled to 4K. Just gives you a little bit extra resolution. And talking about open gate, I would love to see that. I just don't see it happening. It's really hard to see that because no Sony camera has open gate except for the Venice cameras, and I think the Burano is getting open gate now. And open gate's just really good for anamorphic lenses. Particularly, the reason why I bought the Lumix S5 2X is that I needed 3x2 because I've got a 2x anamorphic lens, and that's just going to handle that lens so much better than a 16x9 sensor. Because if you have a 16x9 sensor, then you have a 2x anamorphics, it's literally going to be 2 times the length, which is not good because you're going to cut off so much of your footage and you're going to lose resolution. So that's not amazing. But if you have 3x2, it records the whole sensor and you're not actually going to be stretching it too far.
I'd be surprised if we got open gate with this camera,
16x9. And one thing the Lumix S5 Mark II X actually has as well is 4:3 recording in APS-C crop mode. So that's once again even better when it comes to anamorphic modes. But just having that ability to have open gate and potentially, you know, utilizing it for different crops is pretty beneficial for a lot of people. But the Lumix camera does actually support anamorphic modes when it comes to the stability, but also when it comes to de-squeezing in camera. Now, will they bring it with the a7V? Probably not. I don't see that being the feature
I'd be very surprised, but hey,
but it would be a nice feature to have.
We'll take it if they give it to us.
I think they're going to keep it for the Sony Cine line. Now, one thing that's going to be coming in the newer cameras is the AI chip, and now that AI chip I think is an A7C Mark II.
This is going to be interesting. The AI that works its way into the camera. Very curious what we have going on here.
And the A7CR as well. So that just gives you better autofocus, you know, capabilities. So
Great.
I'm 100% sure that's going to be in there, and that just, you know, gives you a little bit more AI features.
I sometimes run into issues with my autofocus with the Sony cameras, so this constant improvements on their autofocus system would be gigantic. Let's keep working on that, keep building that out.
Within the Sony Alpha cameras. Now, one thing that we have been seeing when it comes to Lumix cameras and a couple of other camera manufacturers is real-time monitoring LUTs. Now, the ability to sort of import your own LUTs and bake it into your footage is pretty interesting. It's something that I don't use, but even if you do have a whole bunch of looks that you can kind of add onto your video footage, but not just video footage, but also photos, you know, if you could bake into some LUTs directly into those photos, I mean, that's kind of cool. It just makes, you know, the image yours. It makes it completely different to someone else's, and it just gives you an extra bit of creativity inside the camera rather than, you know, waiting for your post-production. Now, the last thing that I do think that will be in the a7V is that A7R5 flip screen. Now, it's in the A9 III as well, where you've got the flip up and flip out.
This is a please fix this. I do not like the way the current back screen is on the A7 series.
Which is really handy, especially if you just are shooting straight on. You don't actually have to flip it out to the side. You can just flip it up and still be able to see straight ahead, which is so good. But if you do want to do some vertical shooting, then flipping it out and doing low, you'll still be able to see the screen. So that is probably one of the best screens that they do have in the Sony Alpha cameras right now. And hopefully they're going to be bringing it to the A7V. Now, just going onto that screen, hopefully it's going to be high resolution, because Sony aren't really known for high resolution back screens.
Agreed. Their back screens, their LEDs are pretty bad, so using an external monitor is always helpful when you're shooting to get a sense of your levels, get a sense of your colors, your exposure, all of that. If they improve that, that'd be great, but maybe they want to keep the price low, and that's why they have their current displays. We'll see.
They're usually about, you know, 1.03 million dots, which is pretty poor, to be honest. Hopefully it's around, you know, 2 to 2.5 million dot screens. Just slightly higher resolution gives you a little bit more to sort of look at, vibrant colors, you know, make you a little bit more inspired. But going on with, you know, the resolution of screens, hopefully the EVF is going to be fairly decent as well. Maybe get that 9.44 million dot screen. They did have the 3.69 million dot EVF, which is still pretty decent. It's better than, you know, some of the other cameras. Whether they're going to up that, not 100% sure. They might have produced literally millions of those EVFs and still got some leftovers, so they'll probably just use the leftovers. But if you do think of some features that you do think will be in the a7V, please let me know in the comments below. Really like to know your thoughts, because I think this camera is going to be another big seller, and it's definitely going to be my A cam when this comes.
So again, thank you to Jason Morris for this. Really fantastic. Appreciate you giving us this video. What I want to say, and I'll have a link to his video down below if you want to watch the original, but what I want to say is I think with this camera, with the a7V, we're going to get a couple great features. I do foresee some upgrades. I think we're probably going to be getting 6K footage at least 30 frames per second. That's my hope. It's probably 16:9 footage. I wouldn't say we'll be getting the open gate. I do think we'll be getting faster photography too. This is a big hybrid camera. Like he said, wedding photographers use this. I think we'll probably be getting, you know, 15 frames per second shooting photography-wise. That's my guess. That's what I'm hearing. Don't know if that'll be true yet. I'd love to see that flip out screen on the back. I'd love to see higher pixel rate in that screen for better quality. I can't guarantee that'll happen. These Sony back screens are typically not great, but time will tell, and we'll see what we get in this camera. So go ahead and like, subscribe. We'll check you back in the next one.